Hello. The guest today is Heather Ashley Boyer, class of 2016. She is an actress, a producer, and the director of movies. So hi Heather Ashley. What is it like to be an actor?
Hey Tony, really good to see you. Being an actor is awesome. I really enjoy it. I've been acting in some way basically my whole life, so yeah, it's really fun.
What is it like to be an actor? Like the day to day, like?
The day to day of being an actor, it varies so much. One day you can be in class, the other day you're filming, another day you're rehearsing. Some days it's, you're doing like a side gig or whatever. So yeah, it varies so much from day to day. But personally, in my opinion, I think that's part of what makes it exciting and fun.
Well, like, do you usually have like multiple projects working at the same time? Is that why it's like so many ups and downs every day?
For me, yes. I'm recently, over the past few years, I've been juggling like, 2 to 3 films at one time while also auditioning for other stuff. So it can be a lot. And then in addition to acting work, I also have been very involved in like AI policy work. So people often ask me, how the heck do you balance everything? I don't have a great answer. It's like taking it day by day. And oftentimes, I will be honest, I do feel kind of a bit strung out, or I'm like, feeling stretched pretty thin. So recently I've honestly been trying to sort of like be more streamlined about how I approach things.
Yeah, that makes sense. You've been in LA for a couple of years now. Like over the years, how do you measure that, like your improvement over time?
That's a great question. I think that there's a few different metrics. An easy one is probably like looking at your self-tapes that you submit for acting roles. I think that that's a big one. I think my training has really helped me a lot. Back during the pandemic, I was studying at Playhouse West Philly, and before I started studying there, I just felt this like frustration. I used to be a rower back in high school and college briefly, and when I first started rowing, I kept catching crabs. It's like this term. It's not literal crabs. It's just like when your oar gets stuck in the water and you can potentially, this is really bad, you can potentially like capsize the boat with everybody in it. So that never happened as far as I remember, but I definitely do remember that I kept catching these crabs, as did other people, but I felt really frustrated. I was like, how the heck do I stop catching these crabs? And I would actually watch myself on tape. I would watch myself rowing on the water on like video, and I would talk to my coach and be like, hey, like, how do I stop doing this? And they were like, it'll happen, it'll happen for you. Just keep trying, like, it'll click. And I was so frustrated. It felt like it was never gonna click. And one day, randomly, my body just like did something different and it clicked. And so yeah, so I honestly felt like I had that same experience when I was at Playhouse West Philly, where I was like, I got the same feedback from my teacher. I asked him, I was like, how the heck do I improve faster? I'm all about efficiency. I want to get there now. And it just wasn't happening for me, and it was so embarrassing, and I was like beating myself up about it. And then I think I just sort of relaxed one day. I chatted with one of my classmates, and it just sort of clicked somehow. And I think, yeah, so I think that is definitely a metric where I'm like, ooh, I'm definitely improving. I feel really positive about this. But it's really hard, at least for my learning style. My learning style, I don't think, is like linear. Like, I feel like it's like you have like ups and downs, kind of a roller coaster. And it's just a matter of like sticking with it, seeing it out, knowing that I've been through this before, like in sports. And it's just perseverance while also being curious and learning and, keeping at it and persisting. So yeah, so I think that that's like one of the biggest metrics in my experience is like, is this clicking? Do I see a change like on my self tapes? And obviously if you're booking more stuff, like more roles, that's a good sign. Yeah, exactly. But like even with that, like there's so many factors that go into like why somebody books a role. So just because you booked something or like because you didn't, like that's not necessarily a reflection of like if your skill is like, improving or not. Like it's complicated. So yeah, I try to use like a combination of metrics to measure like, am I improving? Am I heading in a good direction?
Like in rowing, there's like a correct form, or like there's like physics and like body, like the mechanics that's like proven to be the right form. Is there like a right self-tape? Is there like a optimal, the best self-tape that you could make for each role?
It's a really great question. Honestly, I think I'm still figuring that part out a little bit. But yes, there is like a standard that people have. For a while, like it was really big to have like a giant like blue backdrop, but then people were like, no, it should be gray. So I don't know. I feel like some of these trends like change a little bit, and what you hear from casting directors at the end of the day, they're like, whatever, like as long as it's good acting, that's what matters the most. And sure, you shouldn't have like really distracting stuff in your background, you shouldn't have like, you know, dogs barking or cats meowing, you know, you should just keep it like pretty professional and keep it pretty simple. But I think at the end of the day, as long as you have like good acting, that's what matters most.
So when you're looking at the self-tape, like what do you look for? Do you look for like body movements? Do you look for like the way that you speak it? What do you look for?
That's a good question. I think overall, casting directors, I'm not casting directors, so I don't know that I should be like speaking for this, but from what I've heard, I think that they kind of look for like, are you connected to the character? Are you lived? It's like this term, like, are you like living in the character? Are you like living as the character under imaginary circumstances, you know? So I don't think that they really in particular look for like certain movements or whatever. They want you to feel like free. They want it to feel natural, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think one little strategy that people do is, because I've also heard sometimes casting directors say like, I only watched like the first few seconds of a self tape when it can go on for like I don't know, a minute or whatever. Like the whole tape can be like a minute, and they're like, oh, I only watched like the first like 3 seconds or like the first 10 seconds. And from an actor's perspective, we're like, what? We put all this work into a self tape just for it to be like literally the first part, and then you know or you don't. So because of that, and I know the really great casting directors are the ones who are like, no, like we watched the whole thing, or you know, they reassure actors. They're like, that dude, don't worry. But because some casting directors are so pressed for time, and they only do watch the very beginning, actors have learned like, okay, I gotta do something at the beginning, like to kind of have the hook, you know, like
Yeah.
catch their attention somehow.
Like TikTok. Get the
Yes,
hook in.
it's literally like TikTok, exactly. And like TikTok, you know, it's not always the TikTok that has something hooky or catchy at the beginning. Sometimes you do watch because, you know, it's not something earth-shattering at the very beginning, but usually it is something exciting at the beginning. Yeah.
And does it like look more natural? Like you're more naturally the character if the character is like very similar to you, or like what makes the character more natural to an actor?
I think so. I think that that's definitely the easiest like role to find yourself in as an actor. There were, of course, other actors. I adored Val Kilmer, and he often played roles that were like quite different from who he was, but he still played them extremely convincingly, and you really felt like, whoa, he is this character. And actors have all different ways of finding themselves in a character. I don't recall Val's exact approach. It may have involved a little bit of method acting. I'm not quite sure about that, but yeah, method acting is like very hardcore, and you're basically living your life as like in character. And nowadays actors like aren't really a fan of doing that because it's just taxing, and it kind of takes a toll on your family and people around you, you know, your other actors on set. So it's kind of frowned upon, I think, to do method acting nowadays. I feel like it had a bit of a popularity like years ago or whatever, but nowadays I think that the most popular method, or at least the way that I was trained, was the Meisner technique. And that is more about the very beginning of the curriculum is about like repetition. So you literally have a partner, you sit across from a fellow acting student, and you just kind of like observe things about each other, like on a very basic surface level at first, and then it progresses from there. And then eventually you get into scene work, but it really grounds you in a way that I had never experienced being like grounded as an actor previously. And that's like a big term in a positive way that you hear a lot in acting, is like it's grounded. A big compliment. Yes, if someone is like grounded, it's like, wow, like they were really, you know, like settled into the character and really connect. And I feel like that's really the first step of like really good acting, at least dramatic acting. Comedy, that's like its own thing. But yeah.
So for like a drama, then being grounded is very important because it makes it more
Yes.
realistic.
Yes, exactly. And it's more magnetic. I loved Val Kilmer because in pretty much every role he played, he was so magnetic and like charismatic, and that's what I look for when I'm like watching a movie or watching a performance. I'm like, wow, this actor is so magnetic. They really draw the audience in, and it just really inspires me as an actor. Even if I know that like what I bring to the table isn't necessarily that exact thing that let's say Val Kilmer brings to the table, I find myself inspired by that kind of performance because I'm like, wow, this is I could watch him forever.
So that you'll be inspired to be grounded yourself as well.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes, yes. But
Well,
again, I kind
like,
of know that I'm not going to be Val Kilmer at the end of the day, but it's like my own version of being grounded.
so like for the self tape, you would have to show that you're grounded. But then after the self tape is done and you get the role, you still have to be grounded in the role as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that people talk about, like that, auditioning is a skill into itself, whereas playing the role, being in the role on set is like just entirely different. So you do have some people who are, really great at auditioning or really bad at auditioning, and then they get on set and it's like the opposite. So it's tricky. And self-taping is fairly recent, since the pandemic. So I think a lot of actors have been pushing to be back in the room, in the real, physically in the actual audition room more. And I think a lot of actors feel more comfortable with that. There's more of a connection with the casting director. You know that they're gonna watch your whole audition
Yeah.
because you're there,
Not
unless
just
they
the
cut
first
you
few
off.
seconds.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like if they cut you off at 3 seconds in person, it's like, well, that's awkward and uncomfortable. They're less inclined to do that, I would imagine. But yeah.
And as an actor, do you like respond to the audience as well? Like if the casting director is there, they give you small signals and you're able to respond to it?
Exactly. Yes, that's a really great point. Part of being in the room, the casting director can give you an adjustment. And for me, I've learned that helps me a lot because I feel like collaborating with the director or the casting director, like, kind of helps me relax into it more. And I'm like, okay, like they see me and now they're giving me feedback. Okay. And that kind of makes me really excited to like make an adjustment. And I feel like that's something that I feel comfortable with. And like, cause some actors, like they don't take direction even in an audition. And that's something that that's something that they basically screen for. They're like, can this actor take direction? And sometimes they can't. And
That's a red
that
flag.
blows. Yeah, that's a red flag. And honestly, but I'm like, why does that happen? But I think it happens because sometimes in preparing for a role and from memorizing the lines, you get caught in a bit of like a line reading. If you like repeat your lines or if you memorize your lines like in the exact same way every time, you can get sort of trapped and stuck in that. So I think that maybe that is why sometimes actors struggle with taking direction. They're like, wait, I rehearsed it this way. I don't know how to do it another way. So, but yeah, being able to get direction from a director or casting director when you're in the room is like huge for a few reasons, and it can give you a better performance. So yeah, I really do enjoy that part.
That makes sense. So you gotta be grounded and you have to be able to take direction.
Yes, exactly. Because imagine if you get on set and, the director's job is to direct and to tell the actor how they generally, how they want the actor to do the scene. Different directors work differently, but I imagine that the director is going to want to be able to collaborate with the actor and work with the actor and have the actor take direction. And, that's a problem if they can't.
How important is it to like get the perfect actor for that role? Is it like if any of the top 10 auditions they become the role, like a good director can just make sure that the whole thing comes together?
A really great question. I feel like there's not one answer to that. Unfortunately, I will say that I recently finished filming on. I was very involved in casting it, and I think that I was very particular about who we cast, and so it's kind of hard to imagine like somebody else having played the roles that we ended up casting with those actors. But but things happen. Like in all honesty, things happen. Actors drop out or whatever. We didn't have that happen as far as I remember, but in general, even in big productions, like things like get shaken up, and you just got to roll with it. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, you're right. Like, I think that the director just has to pull together whoever he has who's in the cast and kind of make it happen. It's like the show must go on, as we always love to say in film and theater. So yeah, but of course, like with me right now, I'm in the process of to attach actors to a feature, and with that, I am very particular about like who I really want, and it's really hard for me to imagine somebody else in some of the roles that I have in mind. And
Mhm.
you hear that with like even like some big movies. Often, sometimes like roles get offered to actors, and the director basically is like, hey, I can't, I wrote this for you, like I can't imagine anyone else in the role. So yeah, so I think, and with others, they're like, I have no idea who I'm gonna cast in this, and they go on like a big casting search. So I think it really depends on the production and the vision that the director has. But yeah.
That makes sense because if the director and the actor worked well together in the past, then in the future they could work well together as again.
Yes. Yes, exactly. You see that a lot with like Wes Anderson, Chris Nolan, they have like basically an ongoing, like a standing cast that they often
Yeah.
use in everything now, and it works. So,
You gotta be
yeah.
grounded with the character, but you also gotta be grounded with the director as well.
That's right. That's right. You don't want to you got to be cool with the director.
Like, is the goal to be more grounded so that you film each scene with fewer takes, so you get it done earlier? Like, what's like the goal?
Yes, I think that the goal is just to capture like good acting on camera, and if you capture good acting on camera, then yes, there's probably going to be fewer takes. If somebody is not grounded, I can imagine that they're gonna be like, okay, go again, like try it again, try it a different way, like how about you try this, and so yes, I think that being grounded is a very solid first step for dramatic acting.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah,
So
and it
over
has
your
like
career, hmm go
being
ahead.
grounded like has like a stillness when you're on camera, and again, this is something I found it wasn't natural to me, I think, when I first started, just like with rowing, and then it eventually clicked. But yeah, it's like being grounded on camera, it's like there's like a stillness, like a gravitas to you, and it makes you more interesting to watch, and there's less like busyness going on, and every little thing, every little like facial movement, like every little thing means more. And I think in theater, like it's generally different, like you can be bigger. I think that you're still grounded and like centered as an actor, but it's just you're playing to the back of the room typically for theater. Like it's bigger. But especially for on-camera work, you really do need to be grounded if it's like for a dramatic role. Again, unless it's like some sort of comedy twist to it or whatever. But yeah, that groundedness like really draws the audience in, like the viewer into like whatever little thing that you're doing. And yeah, it's I like it.
That makes sense. So the actor and the director, if they can click together, then they work better. Like, what about like the actor and the audience members? Like for each new movie that an actor is in, like they have a fan base that goes to that movie. Like, what makes that that connection?
I mean, yeah, that's a huge point in like studio films. I think that, if like let's say an actor is canceled, well, are they going to cast them in something? Probably not. Like that would be a bad business decision. So, but yeah, so the fan base I think of an actor is important, and I think that's especially like important with like star actors. It's interesting though. I think that has shifted in recent times. Like films like Obsession, more like unknown people in that it was still really successful. So that it had like I think like the online following though. So it was like the actors didn't have a big following, but like the story, I guess, or no, that's not right. I'm confusing that with Backrooms. I tend to blend Backrooms and Obsession in my mind. Yeah, but I guess both of those films are good examples though of films that were like indie films, and they still were very successful despite not having like a Matt Damon leading the cast. So, but I think that in general you do need some sort of hook, just like with auditions or whatever, you know, you do need some sort of hook of like, why this film, why now, why should audiences see it now. And so it could be that they have a star actor, or it could be that the subject matter is very topical right now, or it could be that it's like a franchise or whatever that they have like a loyal fan base for. But
so many factors go into whether
yes,
somebody would go into the movie theater and watch that movie.
exactly. Yes, yes.
It's like as you're acting, like do you think of the end audience as well, or do you mostly think how do I tell this story the best and to let the story carry the way for the audience?
That's a good question. I think that for me in theater, like live theater, and my origin was as a dancer, like ballet dancer, and so for me, I really enjoyed that connection with the audience, being on stage. But for film and TV, it's more about like the role. You're more like lived in the role. It's like you become that character in some sort of way. And it's less about, you're basically trying to act as if the camera is not there. Although you have to be aware of where the camera is, you know, usually, and like what shot they're doing. But you have to, you know, act as if it's not there. Again, unless it's for some stylistic choice where you're like told to, like The Office or whatever, where it's like you're doing a mockumentary. Yeah, but so typically it's more about like living in the role when you're.
Gotcha.
But
That makes sense.
I love both. I think a lot of actors, if you really ask them, they're like, yeah, I love theater. I love that live theater experience and real time feedback from the audience, because you can hear the audience's reaction when you're on set. It's like exciting in a different way, but you don't have that like real time feedback from the audience. You have the feedback maybe from the director or like the crew who's on set. So it's, you know, it's sort of similar, but and I think there's like an energy on set. Like if you feel like a shot is like really going, or a scene is really going well, you feel that energy. So I think it's that energy that I really like. And I guess with theater, typically like it's just more obvious that the feedback you're getting is more obvious in real time. But yeah,
You're
it's just
literally
different.
right there watching you.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I love both. It's just different experiences.
Do you like build up your fan base over time as well? Like, do you like go try and meet the people who watch your films and try to curate like a longer term relationship?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me right now in my progression, I think that a lot of it is like networking kind of and making friends along the way as well, like through coworkers or whatever. But yeah, I think like right now a lot of that is like going to film festivals that my film happens to be in, and then people come up to you and they're like, I loved your film, or you know, it's so great to meet you, like I've seen you online, I've heard of you, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's different. It's a little bit different at like every phase of someone's career. So obviously,
Mm-hmm.
like when they get really big, it's different. But you know, it's, you're right though. It's the value of connecting with your audience and valuing them, and you know, respecting them and all of that. And of course, it should be mutual, where they're respectful of you as well. But yeah, that's definitely a big part, I think, of being an actor. It's like that personal connection. And I think different actors have different views on some of this. Some people are like, oh, I just go in and do the work and then I leave, and audiences and fans, whatever, you know. But my personal feeling is that, you know, audiences and fans are like a big part of, you know, someone's success. So I'm of the opinion that that's something that should be cherished.
Nice. Like over the years, you've started doing some producing and directing as well. Does being a good actor also help you become a good producer and director as well?
Let me think on that. Being an actor. Yes. I think in general, if you wear multiple hats, like with doing different, like having different roles on the set, I think that helps each thing that you do. And in terms of like being an actor and then translating acting stuff into producing, I think that it helps you relate more to the actors. You know what they need. You know, like, if the director's direction is helping them or not. You also know, like, you know, are they doing okay? Like you can literally like put yourself in their shoes and just kind of like check in on them and be like, do they need anything? How can I be of help on the set? And yeah, so I think that so it's helpful, I think.
So as your career progresses, like are you trying to do more producing and more directing over time? Like how do you view the career trajectory?
Let's see. So I've actually not done directing yet. It would
Okay.
be really cool to do it, but I think after producing for a few years now, I basically got into producing because I looked at, Margot Robbie and I was like, whoa, she is amazing. She is
Uh-huh.
an incredible actress and so respected. And then she's also an incredible businesswoman. She's just, doing it all. And so I was extremely inspired by her and other actresses like her. And so I saw that like, oh, she's a producer. I have to do that too. I want to be a multi-hyphenate. I want to be actress, producer, etc. Even Leo DiCaprio, he has his own production company as well, Appian Way.
He's a producer too. Yeah.
He is, yeah. And for Margot Robbie, she produced Saltburn. She wasn't even in Saltburn, so she's and it was incredible. So I was like, okay, that's the blueprint. Margot's the blueprint. How do
Hmm.
I be like that? So then I reached out to some friends, and actually, a Cornellian was one of the first ones to give me a producing role. And yeah, shout out Montez Blair. Thanks, Montez. But yeah, so that was really cool. And then it kind of quickly snowballed, actually, where once I got one producing gig, suddenly other people were coming to me wanting me to produce for them. But it was very great. It was very cool, and I'm very proud of it. But I realized the type of producing that I'm doing right now is probably a little bit different than the type that, let's say, Leo or Margot are doing. So
What is
they have
different
like
in
their
the
whole.
ways to produce?
Yes, so typically I know a lot of like big name folks are, executive producers typically, or they get like a producing credit, so that means they get part of the back end of like the money from the film. And yes, technically they can make creative decisions as well. Technically they can probably make like even casting decisions, like who they want to be in the movie. They can kind of step in at any moment as far as I know and just sort of like have a creative say. Which is ideal because for the longest time actors didn't have that. They were just do what you're told. They were just told to like, do as you're told, and that's all. You're a hired gun, and that's it. But yeah, I think like the big stars are like, yeah, but like I should have a creative say in this, and so they can negotiate that in their contract, where their agent probably is really a great agent, and they're like, okay, yes, this person's going to sign on to your film, but they're going to be an executive producer also. So yeah, so I think I kind of realized that, and the type of producing that I'm doing right now, and who knows, maybe Margot and Leo are much more hands-on than what I'm saying. But I think typically people of that level are doing a million things, and they just don't have time to be super, super hands-on with like producing a film. But for me, a lot of the producing work that I've been doing is very hands-on. So in the sense of like just you're kind of carrying the whole film, making it happen.
Hmm.
I typically have worked with teams of folks, so it's not as if I'm the only person who's making it happen, but I could be working typically with like maybe 1 to 2 other people who are also carrying a really heavy like load on this. And then for other films it's like maybe roughly 5 people or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think like me being an actor, that's kind of, I've realized like that's really my priority. That's really where my heart is, and that's really where I need to focus more in the future on,
Okay.
so that one day I can maybe become like really where I'm aiming to be. But I think it was a very good learning experience, and I don't regret that I did it. I'm very proud that I did it. But it was definitely eye-opening, where I'm like, wow, like producing and executive producing are very different, and there is.
So the goal is to focus more on the acting going forward.
Yes, I think so. And I think it depends. I will say it depends on the project. If someone hands me a script and I'm like, well, this is amazing, which has happened, of course I'm gonna consider taking that on as a producer. But yeah, I think I want to be more streamlined coming up. So
Gotcha. That makes sense. You also do the union, like the SAG-AFTRA work as well. How does that
yes.
balance with the acting work? Like, how do you balance the two with each other?
Yes, again, it's tricky balancing everything, but yeah, but I'm very proud to be doing what I do within SAG-AFTRA. I'm very honored. I was elected by my peers in the fall to be on the board of the LA local.
Wow.
I've also gotten to be in a number of national board meetings for SAG-AFTRA
Mm-hmm.
and like vote in those meetings. So, I mean, it's truly an incredible honor, and I feel a lot of responsibility that comes with that. So, truly, like, I had kind of put my whole life on pause for about like 9 months or something crazy like that
Wow.
to yeah, to try to ensure that SAG-AFTRA folks would be protected when it comes to AI in our latest contract. And I can't like say too much specifically about like stuff regarding all of that. We were covered by NDAs. We had like these things called workers and wages meetings, and so I was like very active in those meetings and also chatting with union leaders about like what I felt we really needed in our contract. And it's tricky because it's complicated. It's like what's politically feasible and also what is existential in our profession. And I personally felt that like AI was in the existential category. And we're still seeing how some of that plays out, like with AI films that have been coming out recently. And we can't stop all of that, unfortunately, but there are protections that we can and did put in our contract, which I'm very grateful for and proud of.
What like to like somebody who's not in the industry, like what's like how is the AI affecting like actors?
I think a lot of actors were very scared just off the bat of like, hey, where is this headed? Are we going to be out of a job? And I think it was very justified to be concerned about that. I'm less concerned about that right this second, but things can change quickly, I think. Tilly Norwood, I don't know if you heard about Tilly Norwood. It's like this whole, everyone's so sick of hearing it in Hollywood, I feel like, including me. But Tilly Norwood is like this AI actor that this alleged former actor created, and I'm like, you call yourself an actress? I don't know. This is not an actor's actor thing to do. The whole premise of what you're doing feels very wrong. So, but yeah, so is this creation Tilly Norwood, and I think now they're making a life story movie or biopic about Tilly Norwood, and I'm like, who cares? But it was, and Tilly Norwood in and of herself, sorry, people are, I swear, Tony, people are so particular about this, like people, and with good right. They're like, we shouldn't be humanizing this thing. It's a computer program, it's not a person. They really try to draw a line. And even in our recent contract, it used to be a synthetic performer previously, and now it is actually, they struck the performer component, and it's only now referred to legally as a synthetic. So even that, actors were very passionate about like that change happening, and we should be, so
Yeah.
because every little nuance of how things are framed is important, and especially when it comes to like legal stuff. So yeah, but anyway, so this Tilly Norwood, nobody likes Tilly Norwood, and our audience is going to like go see a movie with Tilly Norwood. I highly doubt it. Like, she's
What
like
is Tilly Norwood? Is Tilly Norwood recognizable? So like if somebody hears the voice, they're like, oh, that's Tilly Norwood. Like what is Tilly Norwood?
Great question. So Tilly Norwood is like kind of like an avatar. Like it's literally trying to replace, and the creator would argue about that, but let's be real, it's trying to replace like a real human actor. And the creator, she's changed her story, by the way, so many times. Like, it's so fishy. But now she's claiming that, oh, Tilly Norwood is based off of like her actual body movements. So she's basically now trying to claim that it's like performance capture or motion capture, which is like a legit thing in SAG-AFTRA. There's like a category for that, I believe. Like Avatar, used either I think it was performance capture, and so I think she's trying to legitimize this Tilly Norwood as like a viable business option, and she's like, how can I monetize this? How can I get money? And she's basically saying whatever she's saying to try to get that angle. But yeah, but it's tricky for ethical reasons because Tilly Norwood was like trained on, you know, people on the internet, and it hypothetically could put real actors out of work. So, is Tilly Norwood really going to put actors out of work? I doubt it because I've seen the audience backlash now. Like, audiences just flat out seem to hate AI in general, like from an aesthetic standpoint, but also from an ethical standpoint. Like, you even see like data centers, like there's like a massive pushback now
against AI.
on, yeah, because of that ethical component. Which I wasn't sure. I've been following all of this AI stuff for like 6 years now, and I didn't necessarily expect, I hoped, but I didn't expect that there would be such big pushback at this point in the game. So I'm glad that there is. And so personally, I think that like Tilly Norwood isn't something that we need to be overly worried about right now. There's also another company, Higgsfield AI. I know that they tried to like screen their film is like all AI, and I'm not sure if they used real voice actors in that. That's another thing. Like, technically, some people could be like, well, it's like an animation, you know, you can use human voices to do voiceover, but truly, like, 11 Labs exists out there, you know, so 11 Labs, you can like use like AI for a voice or whatever. But yeah, it's just,
Before they
you
had
know,
like CGI effects, right? Like CGI, like to make
yes,
things. So this is different from that.
this is different. Yes, and it's different because again of the way that it was trained and just the existential threat that it presents, because like with CGI, like you could do really cool stuff with it, but you weren't going to ultimately put like entire industries out of work, really, you know? Like, yeah. So I think that because of the wins that we did get in our SAG-AFTRA contract, like I personally am less worried at this moment, but I think it's something that we need to continue to keep an eye on. We need to continue to press Congress and lawmakers like, hey, we need stricter rules on all of this stuff so that it can be used as a tool, because I am of the opinion that there are positive use cases for AI just in general. I use it in my daily life. I know some people don't. Some people are very like hands off, but I try to take more of the middle road on some of that. And yeah, but I think like it can be used as a tool, but even like as of like yesterday, I think the news broke that OpenAI with their most recent model, it like escaped or something on
Gee,
the internet. Yeah, and it hacked into this website called Hugging Face, which stores like AI. It's like a hub, like where they have like AI models that you can use. I think I'm not super familiar with it, but yeah, but basically people are saying like, hey, this is a warning shot. This is what scientists have been concerned about and have been, you know, screaming to the rooftops about for a long time now. And I'm in those circles with those scientists, and I've been trying to amplify what they've been saying, and it's crazy. It's, yeah. So I think that there are real reasons to be concerned about some of the stuff around AI, and I think a lot of people in Hollywood come to it from a place where they're like, oh, it could, you know, it could pose a risk to my job, and I'm like, yes, it could, but there are worse concerns than folks losing our jobs, you know, when it comes to AI. So I'm of the opinion where I'm like, you know, I've got my yeah. I just try to have like a big picture outlook on.
where are the like the battlegrounds like in this like battle? Like are there like so like you said there's Congress, so like Congress could pass a law. There's also the audience in the movie theater. They wouldn't watch the movie if there was like a synthetic in there. Like what are the different places where this is fought over?
Yeah. So definitely I would say California and New York, like, and Tennessee, a lot of the states have taken this
The
up.
state level.
Yes, the state level, which seems to have sort of angered some of the folks, such as like Trump, some of the people in his circle, I think, and they're frustrated and they're like, oh, it's like a patchwork of, you know, state laws, and we need a federal law for some of this. And folks like me are like, okay, well, great. Well, where's the federal law? We don't see one. So, and the thought is like the federal law is likely going to be not as strong as what the states have implemented already. And even the states, like, it's not a done deal with them. Like, they're still like on a daily basis trying to get new laws passed. I had testified for AB 412 in December. There's a hearing at Stanford, and I went up with a bunch of folks from SAG-AFTRA, other creatives, concept artists, and a whole room of us showed up and like overwhelmed the lawmakers. And they were like, oh my gosh, what is this? And there was like an OpenAI rep there, and they were like grilling the OpenAI rep. They're like, what do you have to say for yourself? You know, this is a whole room of people you're basically trying to put out of work. You know, like, do you have any guilt or remorse? Like, what do you have to say? But yeah, so I went up and testified, and this bill was basically to have transparency when copyrighted works are used in an AI system. And that's basically like a very first step to be like, okay, this AI model, was any of my work, like my films, my books, my illustrations, were any of my, you know, creations used to train this? But unfortunately, the law, I don't believe, or the bill doesn't require anything beyond that, because they're just like, we just need to get that first step in there. And then of course, yes, transparency. And then, you know, the step beyond that, I imagine, is for people to be like, oh, you used my thing, my creation? Well, where's the money? You know, so I think they're trying to legally take it like a step at a time. But yeah, it's tricky. So, and then I think it would be great if we could have laws on the federal level. I know there's something called the No Fakes Act that seems to slowly be making progress finally, and SAG-AFTRA has been very supportive of that. I've met with congressional folks and, you know, said why it would be helpful for somebody like me. And yeah, but then there's also the international level, which I think personally is like extremely important for some of the bigger stuff.
It's like films are made all around the world.
Yeah, oh, definitely. They are. Yes. But I think for the international level, for me, I think that there needs to be like a treaty, like to create like a CERN for AI, or some sort of governing body, or just honestly anything. There have been a lot of ideas floated out there, even by some of the leaders of the AI companies, Sam Altman, Dario Amodei, Demi Hassabis. Everybody is trying to be like, okay, how do we sort of work together on some of this? And I think over the last number of months, there actually has been some more traction on some of that, but it's kind of typically it's sort of limited to where leaders of tech companies, or even lawmakers or whoever, people in Trump's circle, everybody is like, okay, we know that we need to do something about AI on an international level, and then that's it. And then they kind of don't seemingly take it a step. Yeah, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
great.
something.
Like, what? Yeah, it's like, okay, what are you gonna do beyond that? Like, some of these discussions, I feel like, that I've been, you know, that I've heard and been part of in DC or whatever, it's like, it's so basic. It's like, sometimes it would boil down to like, oh, we can't do that. And I'm like, but why? Or, oh, China, you know, would never agree to that. And I'm like, but why? Like, have you talked to the Chinese leaders? Like, can we be a little curious about some of this? It's been so like ham-fisted a little bit in some of like the feedback that I've heard, like the counter arguments, you know, to me saying to like a politician, like, hey, like, would you be open to starting like a treaty, or would you be open to, you know, what do you think about some of this? You know, do you think that we need a treaty? And they're like, well, maybe, but it just can't happen. And I'm like, well, why? You know? So I think that the conversation is slowly shifting, but it's still frustratingly like very simple in nature, and I was actually a few months ago trying to get to the bottom of some of this, where I was like, okay, I think we do need a treaty. So I met with all of the authors of draft treaties out there right now for AI. I met with them like one-on-one, and I asked them to like talk me through their draft treaty, and I was like, okay, why do you think we need this? Why do you think we need that? Do you think this is outdated? You know, what are your opinions about this? What are your red lines? You know, and because I felt like maybe the lawmakers like just don't know what to do. Maybe they just don't know what a treaty would look like. Maybe they don't understand the technology well enough. So I was like, maybe I can try to help them solve some of their problems for them. But yeah, I think a lot of the lawmakers are basically just at the point where they're like, okay, maybe this is politically feasible. We didn't think it was. We thought it was impossible. It's like, it's called moving the Overton window. This is like a big term that you hear a lot about it. And so I think that the Overton window has shifted. I think that like the Overton window means like, is this within the realm of like possibility? Is this politically likely, or is this like does this sound crazy, you know? And so I think that the Overton window has shifted to the point where it doesn't sound so crazy anymore. And it's more a matter of like everybody's like, okay, I think we need to do something, but we have no clue what to do. We don't know what's enforceable. We don't know what we can like verifiably do. Yeah. And all of this is specifically around like advanced AI capabilities, like Mythos or Fable or Kimi K3, whatever the newest Chinese model is. It's really around labs that are trying to build or grow like super intelligence, basically. That's, or recursive self-improvement, you know, that's like really what they're gunning for. So it's not so much like constraining like how you use an image generator or something like that. Like, yeah.
When you're like testifying like to legislators, like what makes it effective in like moving the Overton window? What makes it effective in like what like when you like in acting, you look at self tapes, try to make be better a character. Like what makes like your testifying effective?
Yes. So let's see. So I think, so I've testified, but then I've also had like one-on-one meetings with lawmakers and their offices and staffers and stuff like that. So I think it's, in general, you want to have a personal connection to what you're saying. For me, some of what I would lead with was the fact that I was deep faked by in a Will Smith music video last August. So it was pretty crazy, and my image was basically like a digital replica of me was basically created, I believe, from my social media photos. And it was done without my permission and inserted into this music video. And then it was covered by BuzzFeed. It got, you know, some traction on the news. And it was bizarre because I was like, I don't know how to handle this. I didn't even know until a friend told me and screenshotted it. And he was like, this is you. I hope you sue. And I was like, what? Funny. And I'm like, oh my God, it is me. So yeah, so that's kind of like a thing that I tend to lead with, where I'm like, hey, Hollywood, this is how it's already affected me, and it's affecting other people in like more devastating ways than that. You know, it was, for my situation, it was just kind of like, oh, that's a little unsettling, that's a little weird. It's maybe a little bit funny in retrospect, but for other people, it's devastating. You know, there's like what is it, like the nudifying apps or whatever. It's really dark. Like people, I think, bullied over it. You know, it's bad. So, but yeah, so that's typically what I lead in with, like something that like gives a personal connection, and even just like, hey, like saying like, hey, I'm an actor. This presents an existential threat to my profession. That is enough to say that. Like if you're giving like a 15-second testimony or whatever at the mic, just like saying that is enough. But yeah, but then beyond that, like in meetings that I've had with congressional folks, I've sort of led with the personal connection, and then I'm like, you know, a lot of Hollywood folks are concerned about this, but I'm also concerned about like actually much bigger stuff, like national security stuff, and even beyond national security stuff, like truly like existential stuff, that I feel like there's a gap right now in the laws that currently exist and what like the labs, for instance, are allowed to do, and like contingency plans for like if something bad would happen. You know, it seems unclear that there's anything planned for stuff like that. If you listen to a lot of what the labs are saying, a lot of like what the people who lead the labs, like the CEOs, are saying, a lot of it is kind of insane. One of my friends has a social media account devoted just to reposting like insane stuff. He's on like, I don't know, day 150 or 200 now of posting insane things that an AI, that a CEO of a tech company said until I run out of material. And he's just continuing to keep going. So I think that a lot of the CEOs have been saying like really concerning stuff about the future of AI and where they envision all of it going.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine that they have any sort of major like contingency plans, like if something bad would happen. You have every sign is pointing to the opposite of that, not to scare anybody, but like you have a lot of people who have resigned from the AI labs, or have been like whistleblowers. So I think that it's like this exciting new technology right now, but the fact that they're racing towards building superintelligence is kind of unnerving and seems very reckless. And another thing, I think that legally, OpenAI in particular was trying to, I believe, like get legal immunity somehow, like if their model would be used for, something, and let's say people like lost their lives or got injured or whatever. I think that OpenAI was actually trying to like file for some sort of law that would provide them immunity. So, and I get like from a business standpoint, I guess like why they would do that, but it's just stuff like that. Like I think that they know that some of what they're doing is risky, and they're just sort of continuing down that path unchecked. Let's put it that way, unchecked.
You would think that like the movie industry, like the acting, they have such a big following, such a big attention of like so many people. And like you're like
Yeah.
probably the most powerful group out there to get the message across. Well, what are like the blockers in like getting the message to everybody on the importance of this?
That's a great question. So, I think that SAG-AFTRA has been signing on to open letters and stuff recently, which is great, and they have been. So they are getting the message out there somewhat. Sean Astin has actually been really great and like, making the rounds to network with other labor leaders. So I actually do think he's doing a really great job of being a public face of our union and trying to lead, knowing that it's this pivotal moment where we've really got to take like a stand on some of this. So I think that SAG-AFTRA is doing a good job of some of that. I know that we even have like lobbyists and stuff in DC and Sacramento. Recently met, and I'm really proud of the work that they're doing. I think that there's room for us to do more. I think that sometimes it's tricky where even with communicating with members, SAG-AFTRA has been hesitant at times because they're maybe worried about flooding members, too much, and they're like, we have to be judicious about when we reach out to members, and we have to, do it with intention, and otherwise they're not going to pay attention when it really matters. So I think that that's actually truly like the philosophy of the, I guess mainly like the staff people at SAG-AFTRA. And I get that. I understand that, and I think that recently I have seen the union like reach out to members and try to mobilize people around stuff like the No Fakes Act. They did a really big push recently on that, and I was really excited and glad to see that. I'm hopeful that there can be more of that, especially around like big picture stuff. And I think that there is support on that from SAG-AFTRA. I'm connected to folks at MIT and something called the Future of Life Institute, which I'm very proud of and inspired by the work that they're all doing. And they authored a piece about, what was it? The pro-human AI declaration. And I reached out to the folks at SAG-AFTRA and I was like, hey, would you want to sign on to this? I feel like this is in line with our values. We are certainly pro-human, as you'd think everybody should be, except maybe Larry Page. I think Elon Musk had some sort of beef with him. But anyways, that's a bit of a niche reference and beside the point. But so I was very encouraged that SAG-AFTRA did sign on to the pro-human AI declaration, and my hope is that declaration, a bunch of different organizations signed on to it, and my hope is that we can tap into that coalition of folks and really band together on some stuff, because we all have a common interest. Really, we have the common interest of keeping our unions and our industries centered around humans, and sure, using AI as a tool, but I don't know, like other stuff around AI is a slippery slope. I think in another podcast I went on, someone was like, it was a Cornellian, Derek Ting. I was on Derek Ting's podcast. Yeah. And that was, I think, my first ever podcast I was on. And so I think at the very end he was like, hey, Heather Ashley, give us like a wild prediction or whatever. And I was like, okay. So, and we were talking about AI. And so I think I said like, my big prediction is that down the road at some point there's going to be a big debate about whether AI systems deserve, I think it's patienthood or like personhood, like being given like moral consideration as like potentially as equal to humans. And I know that sounds like wild and crazy, but I don't know. I think that there are absolutely people who are out there and who are thinking about these things already. I know that like Anthropic hired somebody, I think specifically to look into stuff like that. Like, hey, should we be considering like the well-being of like these AI models? So yeah, so it's a slippery slope, I guess, is what I'm saying, and it's a hard question to answer now and just in general. It's like the hard question, I think, of philosophy is like, is consciousness able to be proven? Is, you know, how do we define it? Like, so I think a lot of this can get very heady and all of that. So I think that maybe those people who are advocates for AI rights, which may grow down the road as time goes on, and as people have like relationships with chatbots and stuff like that, you know, that those voices may grow, and that's where something like the pro-human AI declaration, that's where groups like that become even more relevant, if that makes sense. Where right now it's like, well, of course we're pro-humans, like what else would we be? But yeah, so
Well, when you like first like started doing acting things, like this wasn't even on like the news or anything. This AI, it's completely new.
it is you're right. Yeah, I first learned about the whole like where the future was headed with AI back in like 2020, I think. And no, you're right, nobody was talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like told a few people in there like that sounds insane. I think I was talking about like the singularity and stuff like that, which, you know, there are like books written about like super intelligence and singularity and all of it. In hindsight, it was like very prescient and very forward thinking at the time. So it's interesting, like AI technically has been around even before I was born, like in some sort of way, but it's like a new AI that really broke through with Transformers and like not Transformers the movie, but like neural networks and, you know, the techie stuff of AI, like how they work. That is what shifted. I think that there's something AlexNet or something or whatever, some early AI, like, yeah, it's been a progression is what I'm trying to say. But I think in the public, in the zeitgeist, in the public eye, it's like, whoa, this came out of nowhere. But I think like the nerdy folks, you know, and even like sci-fi writers have been thinking and talking about this for a long time. And, you know, even back to maybe the 50s or whatever, I forget when, or the 70s. I think like Dartmouth actually had some sort of role in the early days of AI. But yeah, it's a totally new era now, recently, and things have just been changing so fast. Actors can sometimes now get scanned on sets. I don't know that that's happening as much as it had been, but I do remember
What
seeing
does
a
that
lot of
mean?
that.
You getting scanned on set?
Right, right. So this is something that actors were very upset about, and I think that our new contract like is stricter on this. But basically, especially I would say for like background actors in particular, you would like go to set to like be on a TV show or whatever, and then once you get there, they're like, "Great, glad you're here. Now we're gonna take you and we're going to scan you, like scan your body," and you're like, well, I don't really want to do that. And they're like, well, oh, if you don't want to do, well, then you can leave. Like, you don't have to, we'll let you go. You can go home. You know, we're not going to pay you or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, so it was basically a take it or leave it, where it in effect, it in practical terms, it became a condition of employment where you basically had to agree to having a whole body scan, which then they could use to create an AI avatar of you. And then they can put you in their film or their television show, just, you know, ad infinitum, you know. And there really weren't many rules around that, I think, starting in like 2023-ish or whenever that was. It was after our contract, like 2 cycles ago, I think. But it effectively became like kind of a condition of employment, even though if you ask a legal person, they'll say, no, it's not a condition of employment. No, it's not. But it effectively was, if that makes sense, because of the nature of Hollywood, where it's like, oh, you don't want to do this? Well, then we'll just hire somebody else. You know, it's so competitive. So it's like a race to the bottom of who's going to agree to, you know, the least good thing. Which is why unions are so important in Hollywood, because it is truly a race to the bottom otherwise, because you've just got somebody who's like going to be desperate for any role, even if they're not getting paid or whatever. You know, I've been there. Like, I think we've all been there at some point. But yeah, but the scanning thing was a big hot topic, and I am hopeful. And I would hear specific stories of like specific shows that I know, love, and watch, and people were having this happen to them, and they felt uncomfortable about it because they were like, "Wait, you're scanning me, and then you're basically saying like I might like you're paying me a day's rate, and then that might be it. Like you technically don't have to hire me like ever again." So yeah, and so I think that like bigger name actors didn't have to worry about that maybe as much because somebody's gonna want to hire them in general. Like it's just a little bit different. But in my view, I was like, honestly, everybody is at risk of this. Like if a studio decides, oh, it's more convenient to use the scan of, let's say, Tom Cruise or whatever, they're like, oh, Tom Cruise, he's very expensive. Like let's just use his scan and we don't know, like, what if he jumps on a couch again, like he did on Oprah or whatever it was. I don't know. Like, Tom Cruise is a bad example. He seems like a great guy. But I don't know. Like, technically, a studio might be like, oh, human actors are pesky to work with. Let's just use, like, their scan. They don't have to take bathroom breaks. They don't have to they don't have to be fed food. So it's just a very slippery slope is the truth. And fortunately, I don't think that all of the fears around that, I think that they started playing out a little bit, especially around background folks. But I think that because we have these new contracts and because we're on top of it, it's not worst case scenario doomsday, with them like hiring AI scans of name actors, stars. Although they've thought about it and they tried it, I think, actually with The Rock. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and then for Moana, and then I think that they backed off because they were like, ooh, this is legally dicey. We might not be able to own all of the footage if we use his AI scan, which is a very, like, this gets so in the weeds. But that was truly why they didn't use his scan, because as far as I know, I've read like an article about this, but yeah, I think that they were worried, like, oh, we won't be able to actually like be able to profit off of this entirely.
If earlier we talked about there's like the casting director, then there's a director, and the actor. Like how aligned are all the different positions on this topic? Like are some positions different incentives than other positions?
Yes. So I know that like the Academy is like shorthand for the group that votes on the Oscars. It's the Academy of Motion
Okay.
Picture Arts and Sciences, I believe. But yeah, the Academy actually is a really good case study of that because they just recently created new rules around AI and filmmaking and like what is going to be eligible for an Oscar, stuff like that. So yeah, so I think that actors tend to be very like hard-lined, like, hey, we don't want like AI to replace us. Some actors are of the opinion of, well, it'll get me more work if I can have my AI avatar on set. That'll free me up
Mm-hmm.
to, I can license it out. So some people have very different opinions on stuff like that. There's also the idea of, well, Val Kilmer is a good example because, he very sadly passed away and his AI avatar was used posthumously in a film, like a whole film. And I guess his family is getting the proceeds from that, but people were very up in arms about that, and I felt not right about that myself as someone who adored him, But it's up for debate, if people want to use and license their avatar after their death, that's again something where people are like, my family could benefit from this, and I'm still kind of, I don't know really where I stand on stuff like that. I feel not great about it, I guess, but I understand why people would want to do that. But I also think our audience is going to come see that. I doubt it. But anyways, going back to the different branches of like
So
the
there's
different
academy.
professions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the Academy, I think that the actors really like, it's kind of a no-no for actors, really. Like, I don't think that you can. I think that they did recently make a rule that like an AI actor can't win an Oscar.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're like, thank God. But I don't know what all of the other branches have decided. I know that there is like going to be some sort of discussion about some of that, like what's going to
Uh-huh.
be able to, what can win Best Picture, like what are the rules going to be around that. So I don't know like all of the outcome around stuff like that. But yeah, I think that like producers might want to use AI more than like an actor would be okay with it. I think that writers might generally, like, as long as it's used as a tool in the writing process, like, maybe that would be permissible. But
Hmm.
I think when it comes down to credit, that's when it's like, no, like, an AI system can't be credited for writing something. Even in copyright law, like, you can't. I believe the law is that you can't copyright something if it's AI generated. So, and that's again why they didn't want to have AI Dwayne The Rock Johnson, because they were like, oh, we actually can't copyright this, like, if it's not actually him. And then directors, oh, the Directors Guild. Actually,
Okay.
the Directors Guild and the Writers Guild, they actually got really strong protections on AI, in my opinion, before SAG-AFTRA did. So I think that the directors have always been on top of, like, having AI, not be a director, have a director be human. Yeah, yeah. I think,
So like
like,
the director would be the one to like build a relationship with the actor to tell the actor to do this and that rather than AI
yeah.
telling the actor. Okay.
Yeah, imagine, like, it's hard to imagine, like, an AI director, right? Like, what are we doing? So, like, we've lost the plot at that point. It's like you have, like, a little, like, device, and I don't know, that just doesn't seem right. But, yeah, and then I think there's also, like, a VFX branch of the Academy. I don't know, like, where they stand on stuff, and I'm not involved in, like, these
Hmm.
decisions at all. But yeah, so I think that when the news came out that the Academy had banned, like, AI actors from winning an Academy Award, everybody breathed a big sigh of relief. And I think a lot of us also were probably like, why the heck do we even have to be, like, having these discussions? Like, this is so
Yeah.
silly. But it's important. It's important.
Yeah. So you were elected one of the union leaders for the LA area. Like like what was the process in getting elected? Like how did you build up your like voter base, the people who voted for you? Like
Yeah, yeah. So I was elected last August, I believe, to the LA local board, and this was my first time in, like, a public-facing position, if that makes sense. I previously was on committees within SAG-AFTRA. I was on the New Technology Committee, which dealt a lot with, like, AI stuff, and then also the LA GAP Committee, which is Government and Public Policy Committee. And Sean Astin, before he was elected president, was actually our chair of that committee, I believe. And so I actually got to know Sean a little bit through that committee work. And so that was really cool and inspiring. And we actually went out to Sacramento and met with lawmakers. And so that was very inspiring. And so I was already getting involved in what's called, like, union service through the committee work. But I felt like, okay, I want to have a bigger impact here. I feel like my voice is needed. I don't really see other people saying what I'm saying. So, specifically on AI. So, I really did run, like, on a platform of, like, hey, this is my track record. This is what I've done with AI stuff, fighting for AI protections for actors and people in all industries, frankly. And this is what I want to achieve in the future. And ironically, not all of what I want to achieve in the future, not all of that, or very little of that probably can even be done through being on the LA local board. So, but I still felt that it was, like, a big part of who I am, and I felt like that would resonate with people, where they would want somebody like me to be on the LA local board, so that if stuff around AI does come up, which it typically does, that somebody like me would be there to be a voice and come down hard on, like, the importance of having AI strictly be used as a tool, and to keep our profession human as much as possible. And to protect us. And I think that in terms of, like, building my base of people, there were, like, a couple things that contributed in a big way. 3 years ago, like, when we had gone on strike, I was very vocal on the picket lines about, the importance of having protections around AI. And I actually went to a town hall at the very end of all of that, when we were trying to decide how we were going to vote on our new contract. We were like, okay, do we ratify this? Or do we go back to the bargaining table and, like, fight for more? And I was very strongly feeling that we should go back to the bargaining table and fight for more, because at the time I was like, I read the contract, the summary or whatever it was, the MOA, and I was like, whoa, there's a lot of loopholes in here. This is not good when it comes to AI. And so I was very vocal. I spoke in front of, I believe it was like 9,000 people on a live stream of this big town hall at this place in LA called the Palladium. And so I basically asked some questions of the union leaders at the time and addressed like Fran Drescher and Duncan Crabtree Ireland, and I, voiced my concerns. And I think that what I said resonated with a lot of people who were watching, and so I think a lot of people, that was their first intro to me. They were like, "Oh, who's she?" And I was one of many who were expressing my views on that night. But yeah, that was kind of like the big opening, and I then went on like some other Zooms that we were having at the time. The one had like 800 people in attendance, and I think I hosted that actually. Yeah, I hosted this like 800 person Zoom, and we had like board members on, and it was just like a forum for them to be able to give their personal views on everything. And so I think, again, people were like, "Who's Heather Ashley? She's not a board member. What's she doing? What's she doing here? Who is she?" And then fast forward to this past summer, or last summer, a year ago, I heard that the board elections were going to be coming up, and one thing led to another, and I got to be on a slate, actually, which is a pretty big deal for SAG-AFTRA. They send out like these mailers, these like brochures, and Sean Astin was like on the cover, and he was like the big person, the big main guy who was running, and we had like a bunch of other really cool people that I was honored to be also on the slate with. So yeah, the slate was called the Coalition slate, and I think that honestly that had a probably very big impact in me winning my
But for
race.
these elections, like, what are the typical platforms that people run on? Like, you ran on like the AI like platform. Like, well, what other platforms did people care about, like in the union?
Yeah, I think it's kind of whatever they tend to have experience in. So other folks are really focused on like residuals, changing the residual structure, getting residuals for streaming, stuff like that. And for me, I've unfortunately not been in a position yet where I know a whole lot of a lot about residuals, because to my knowledge, I've not received residuals yet. So one day, hopefully, but yeah. So there are other people that that's like a big focus for them, and so I'm glad that we have people who are kind of like subject matter experts in that. And then other people know more about like the health plan. That was also something that was a big hot topic this year, and I was telling folks who I know, I was like, catch me up on this. I've not qualified for the health plan yet. Like I don't know as much as you would about some of this, or same with like the pension plan. So same thing. I was like, I hope to one day, but like I'm not there yet, So you've got people who are frankly at all different stages of their career, and I'm probably much more of a newbie compared to some of these other people who have been working since they were like a baby, for some of them, like their entire lives, or they come from Hollywood families, So I'm very aware that I'm like much more, that I have a lot to learn when in some of these specific areas, and so I'm all about trying to absorb the knowledge from people who are wiser than myself and more experienced on some of this. So
Yeah. Are there like different like factions that were forming in like the like that existed in like 2016, like before all the AI stuff? And then like is AI like more like a unifying force that unified all the different factions together because it affects everybody? Like how does the AI topic compare to all the other topics that are important to them?
honestly, I think so, and that's why I felt kind of lucky to run on that, because I was like, just in general, like as something that just as something that I'm involved in, I do feel like AI is actually like a really unifying topic, even across all industries. Yeah, so I do think that it is something that did unify members in a lot of ways, and I think that it was like a big topic this year, last cycle, for the new contracts. And yeah, and there are like different, I think you mentioned, like there are different factions in the union, or there actually, you're right, that there aren't as much anymore from my understanding. They have actually different like political parties, which I didn't know until relatively recently, like when I really started getting involved in all of this. Like there's a group called Members First, or Membership First, and then another one is Unite for Strength. And so they used to be like, running against each other in all these elections. And so I actually was brought in as like what's called like an independent candidate. So,
Not separate from
yeah.
the
What? What?
separate from the
Yes.
original two.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that there's actually been a big effort over the last number of years, specifically in the LA local, for members to try to like reform the LA local, like to try to have it be less partisan, to try to have it be more productive, more maybe progressive, And so the people who kind of like set up the slate actually wanted to bring in people like me and did. They were actually very successful. Like I think all of us that ran as independents on the slate, I think all of us won as far as I know. So
The
I think that,
coalition,
yes, the
the coalition.
coalition slate. Yes, yes, yes. And so, and people have different opinions about like, should there be a slate at all? That we don't know about that,
Mm.
And so fair enough. Like I understand where that comes from, but I think that in terms of practicality, if you are trying to win, it does benefit you to be on the slate, So I was very grateful to be on the slate. Whether it should exist, that's, something that other people debate. But yeah, it was just a group that I was honored to be part of, to be honest. I was like,
Yeah.
this is like the God Squad. Like, these people are inspiring and I want to be like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Like what's the limited resource that the votes are trying to allocate better? Is it like attention with legislators that you're trying to have more larger allocation towards AI, or is it there's like a budget where you're trying to spend more of the budget on like the AI, or like what's the like being elected for like the AI platform? Like what things are you trying to allocate better in that direction?
That's a really great, good, hard hitting question. Yeah. Like I was saying, from my understanding, I think that there's
Okay.
limited. I think that there's limited things that I can do in the LA local board
Okay.
to affect a lot of extreme, like major change on some of the AI stuff. But that doesn't mean like it's complicated. I guess what I'm trying to say is like the LA local board is not actually the area in which I'm mostly trying to affect the biggest change, specifically on AI.
There's state level
Yes.
board. There's also the national board. So there's like different
Yes.
layers of boards.
There are. Yes. Well, so there's a national board and then there's like a local board. So, and I've been in meetings with both. But
Wow, a lot of
yes.
bureaucracy on this.
Yes, yes, exactly. And the thing is, I think that it's harder or maybe impossible to get on the national board meetings without already being an LA local board member. I could be wrong about that,
It's like
but
a step.
yes, exactly. It's like being an alternate. Like if somebody's sick or can't make it, then they email us and they're like, "Hey, can you make it?" Like, and so I respond like, "Yes, I can. Please sign me up." But yeah.
So
And
wait, so the
so
new technologies in the government and policy groups so those were on the local level or were they on the national level?
they have both. I'm currently on the local level for those as well. Yeah. But I have friends who are on the national, and I was asking the other day, I was like, what's the difference? Like, what do you guys actually
Yeah.
do that's, is there a benefit to being on the national? I don't know. But yeah, so, but I do feel like being part of certain committees, being part of the LA local board. So for instance, being part of the LA local board means that I can advocate for certain committees. And this actually did happen like recently. So I don't know how much I'm able to elaborate on some of this. But I guess hypothetically, let's say hypothetically, I, as a board member, we are able to discuss like things regarding certain committees and whether we should or shouldn't have certain committees or if certain committees should come back that have been disbanded, stuff like that. And so yeah, so that is part of where I try to have influence. And then honestly, in more informal ways that are outside of my like formal capacities as a board member, I think just having the title of the board member gives you more respect and more clout when you're in other meetings and you're like advocating for AI stuff. Like let's say I'm in like let's say I'm just having a conversation with one of the union leaders, and I'm talking about AI stuff. Like it isn't technically through my role as like an LA board member that I'm making an announcement in like the board meeting, although I have done that. But my point is like I think that the real change sometimes comes about in more informal ways, in more informal conversations, one-on-one conversations. But yes, basically, that's a very long way of saying
Yeah,
that I'm doing all that I can on the LA local
that
board.
makes sense.
But yeah, but the LA local board isn't really specifically focused around AI, but it comes up from time to time. So yeah, I don't know.
So, like the conversation topics. Like how about constituent
Yes.
services? Like do you work with like the other members of the local chapter to like help them if they have like AI questions that pop up? Like if
Yes.
this so like what are your like interactions with your constituents like?
Yes, exactly, exactly. So I often have like a lot of people reaching out to me and being like, "Hey, did you see this happen? What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" And yes, I try to be a resource for anybody who like has had, an AI situation happen to them, like how it happened to me. But the tricky thing
Yeah.
is on that, honestly though, on that, like there wasn't like a really good clear like remedy on what to do. So on some stuff there is, like I said, like with the scanning and where it's covered by the contract and it's legally there's something to do about that. But some stuff, like it's much more like, whoa, this is uncharted territory. What do we do? How do we handle this? And so that's where I feel like the answer tends to be more so around like federal and state, where I'm like, okay, great. This is somebody who probably should get, involved in advocacy work, maybe get involved in committee work, and just kind of be more outspoken. Kind of basically following a similar path as I did.
Hmm. Yeah.
In the union and outside the union. And it's so not just me who has been advocating for stuff on federal and local level with lawmakers. Jason George from Grey's Anatomy went up and gave a very inspiring testimony and speech at Stanford when I was there. And, Sean Astin, I think, has spoken before Congress or Senate or something recently on the Hill. So, and I know Jolie Fisher, our local president, I actually bumped into her in DC like last March, I think. And she and Lisa Ann Walter from Abbott Elementary and the Parent Trap, they were there meeting with, I think, Fetterman's office. So yeah, so I'm really inspired that it's a team effort. Yeah, which it has to be. It can't be just like one
Yeah.
person who's like, sounding the alarm. So
Hmm. This is so interesting. It's like the whole industry is changing, and then you have to figure out what the future looks like.
yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the whole thing that I think a lot of the pushback on the AI companies is like, hey, like you're kind of the tech companies are sort of trying to push this future onto us, and they have it laid out in surprising detail if you really get into the weeds on some of that and learn about some of their beliefs. And it's like, hey, don't we have a say in any of this? Like the tech companies, like it's such a small percentage of people in the world. Why should they be like dictating the future for everybody without our consent in some ways?
That's why
Yeah.
unions and governments are important to stand
Yes,
up for everybody.
exactly. Exactly. It's the whole checks and balances system, which is what our country is founded on. So that's what I think that our role is. Our role isn't to be the deciding people either. It's to just be a voice in the discussion and hopefully to provide like a reasoned and reasonable check on some of the currently unchecked power coming from
Yeah.
the tech CEOs.
Hmm. Super. So Heather Ashley, for the closing question, I always ask the guest, what's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for you?
Let's see. Honestly, it's hard to pick just one because I feel like there have been so many like kind people in my life and kind interactions, and I feel like I don't know. I just feel very grateful to a lot of people, a lot of Cornellians, a lot of like non-Cornellians, just a lot of people in general. I feel like yeah. But okay, if I have to pick one, I would say I was very grateful to a woman named Dr. Molly Shaw. She is a cardiologist. She works at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And she kind of took a chance on me when what I was saying sounded maybe a little bit crazy or at the very least unconventional. And she didn't know me at all, and she just, out of the goodness and kindness of her heart, like, was down to, take my proposal and suggestion. Basically, this was to save my dog Panini's life and treat her heart condition. Panini has a condition called AV block, and it's like a specific type called Mobitz type 2. The cardiologists who are watching will know what that is. But yeah, Panini had basically collapsed on the picket line, actually outside of Netflix, a few years ago, and she started going into shock. Her gums had turned purple. So that's how I found out that she has this heart condition, and she almost died at the time. But they basically told me, hey, like, she has this problem where the electrical signals aren't going through her heart the way that they should, and they're not beating the way that they, her heart's not beating the way it should, and she was having like 8-second pauses every night while she was sleeping, and I didn't even know. So very scary stuff. And I looked into what I should do, and yeah, they were basically like, these are the pacemakers that are, we went to a bunch of different facilities, veterinary facilities, and they were like, oh, we can definitely help, but this is the pacemaker that your dog is going to be receiving, and it's like about like that big or whatever, and it's going to like go in her neck. And I was like, and they were like, oh, it's no big deal. And I was like, it sounds like a big deal. Like, she's a tiny dog. So I just ethically didn't feel right about it. And they were going to have to like cut her jugular vein. It just didn't feel right. And so I did a lot of research on my own and found out that they do something different in human babies, where they have a modified Micra pacemaker made by Medtronic. And it's like a little tiny battery. And usually in human adults, it's like a leadless pacemaker that just goes right into your heart, and it just like inserts. But for small human babies, and for now Panini, they were able to make a modified device where they have it just go in your body somewhere. In Panini's case, it went in her belly, and you barely notice it. It's just like a little lump. And then they attach leads to go to her heart from that battery. And so I had done all this research. I had read like all these academic journal articles, and I was like, I think this can work in animals. And I received so much rejection with this from veterinary hospitals. Nobody would do it, and it was very wild and eye-opening. But just with how veterinary medicine works, and I was thinking, oh, all these places are so innovative. That's how they market themselves. That's how they brand themselves, like on their website. But then in actuality, they were like, no, we're just going to do what we know. And I'm like, but this is an advancement in medicine for animals. And they just weren't game for it. But yeah, so I found this Dr. Shaw, who is a human doctor, and she immediately, it made sense for her. And she and I just really connected and clicked, and I could tell that we were like-minded. And so she was really the one that facilitated it to be able to make it happen. And then fortunately Cornell was the one to actually like perform the surgery, and so it was like a joint effort in that sort of way. But Dr. Shaw from CHOP was really the one that, if she hadn't said yes, it would never probably have. And the origin story of that is very funny, because I had, the way it was, I called CHOP, and I think I was trying to make an appointment. I think I had called CHOP and NYU, and CHOP was the one that responded first. But I had like these two conversations with the intake people, and they were like, because I didn't know how to like connect with them in any other way. I think I was trying to like reach specific doctors, and so I got funneled to the intake line. And they were like, oh, and so what's your baby's date of birth? And what is your baby's medical insurance? And I gave the date of birth, and then on the medical insurance, I was like, oh, I don't know what to say. And so I was like, well, she has 4 legs and a tail. She's not your typical patient. But yeah, but anyways, and the one lady like had like a mental like freeze. She was like, what? She's like, what is happening? Is this a prank call? But yeah, so it all worked out. And fortunately also Panini's device, another positive is it was not taken from like a baby, for instance, that would have been in line to receive it. It was taken from like, I think it was it was like it had been shelved because it had like this tiny defect or whatever, or like it was like a manufacturing thing. Like it was missing. It was literally missing like a screw that they were just like, well, it's not perfect, so we're gonna set it aside. So it truly just was meant to be, as some things are, and it just worked out. So yeah, so I'm very grateful to Dr. Shaw. I'm grateful to the medical device company folks as well. It was a series of yeses, but I think that Dr. Shaw was really the linchpin in that, who needed to say yes and did.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing, Heather Ashley.
Yes, thank you, Tony. Thank